The Haunted Narrator. The Night Shift Chronicles. Episode 1. The Night Shift That Changed Everything.
I was the person who'd laugh at ghost stories and explain away strange occurrences with logic and reason. That changed after my third week working security at Westlake Memorial Hospital. I should mention that Westlake isn't like other hospitals. The main facility is modern and still operating, but the East Wing, where I was assigned, had been closed for renovation after a fire damaged much of the fourth floor back in 2018. My job was simple: patrol the empty halls every 2 hours and make sure no one had broken in. The rest of the time, I sat at the security desk near the entrance, watching cameras that rarely showed anything but empty corridors. It was a perfect job for a graduate student like me. Quiet shifts where I could study between patrols. At least, that's what I thought. March 17th. A Tuesday night. My shift started at 11 p.m. and would end at 7 a.m. Nothing unusual about that night at first. The handoff from the day shift guy, Mike, was routine. He mentioned that maintenance had been working on the electrical system, so I might notice some flickering lights. "Don't worry about calling it in unless they go completely out," he said. "They're aware of the issue." I settled in at the desk around 11:30. The hospital was eerily quiet, just the occasional creaking you'd expect from an old building. I pulled out my textbook and started reading about cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. I was studying psychology, ironically enough. My first patrol was at 1 a.m. Standard procedure: check each floor, sign the logbook at each checkpoint, and return to the desk. The first and second floors were completely normal. Just empty patient rooms, old nurses' stations, and storage areas. When I reached the third floor, I noticed the temperature had dropped significantly. In March, that wasn't unusual. The heating system wasn't running at full capacity in the unused wing. But this was different. It was like walking into a freezer. I could see my breath-forming clouds in front of me. I remember thinking it was strange that just one floor would be so much colder than the others. I signed the logbook and continued my patrol. Nothing else unusual happened during that round. I returned to the desk, made my notes in the main log, and went back to studying. At 2:43 a.m., the desk phone rang. This wasn't entirely unusual. Sometimes the main security office would call to check in. I picked up, expecting to hear my supervisor. "Security, East Wing." There was nothing but static on the line. Then, just as I was about to hang up, I heard what sounded like whispering. I couldn't make out any words, just the cadence of someone whispering urgently. "Hello? This is security. Can you repeat that?" The whispering stopped. Then the line went dead. I checked the caller ID, internal extension 404. I knew that couldn't be right. The fourth floor was completely closed off after the fire. Those phone lines had been disconnected. I tried calling the extension back, but got an error tone. I noted the call in my log and decided to mention it to my supervisor in the morning. Looking back, I should have been more concerned, but at the time, I assumed it was just crossed wires from the electrical work. My second patrol started at 3 a.m. The first and second floors were still normal, though I found myself moving more quickly than usual. Something about the building felt different. Tense, somehow. When I reached the third floor again, the temperature was back to normal. I relaxed a bit, thinking whatever HVAC issue had caused the cold spot earlier had been resolved. I signed the third floor checkpoint and was about to head back down when I heard it: footsteps on the floor above me. Clear, distinct footsteps, like someone wearing hard-soled shoes walking slowly down a hallway. I froze. Remember, the fourth floor was supposed to be completely empty, not just of people, but of furniture and equipment too. Everything had been removed after the fire. There shouldn't have been anyone up there. There shouldn't have been any floor to walk on in parts. The footsteps continued for about 30 seconds, moving from one end of the ceiling to the other, directly above me. Then they stopped. Protocol said I should investigate any signs of intrusion, but protocol also said I should never enter the fourth floor alone due to structural damage. I decided to call it in. I tried radioing the main security office, but got nothing but static. My cell phone showed no signal either, which was unusual but not unheard of in the older part of the building with its thick walls. I decided to go back to the security desk and call from there. As I turned toward the stairwell, the lights in the hallway flickered and went out, leaving me in darkness except for my flashlight beam. In that moment of darkness, I heard a voice directly behind me. Room 404. Help her. I spun around, heart pounding, but there was no one there. Just an empty hallway stretching into darkness. The lights flickered back on a few seconds later. I'd like to say I was brave, that I decided to investigate immediately. But the truth is, I ran. I took the stairs down 2 at a time and didn't stop until I reached the security desk. I called the main security office and reported what had happened. They told me to sit tight, they'd send someone over to do a sweep with me. But it would take them about 20 minutes to get someone there. Those were the longest 20 minutes of my life. I kept watching the monitor that showed the stairwell, half expecting to see someone or something coming down from the 4th floor. But the camera showed nothing unusual. Then I noticed something. The camera for the 3rd floor hallway, where I'd just been, was showing a figure at the far end. Just standing there, partially obscured in shadow. I adjusted the camera angle using the controls, trying to get a better look. As I zoomed in, the figure seemed to step back, staying just at the edge of visibility. It looked like a woman in what might have been a hospital gown, but the image was too grainy to be sure. Then the 3rd floor camera feed went static. When it cleared a few seconds later, the hallway was empty. When Mark from the main office arrived, we did a thorough sweep of the first 3 floors. We found nothing unusual. He was understanding but clearly skeptical about what I'd heard and seen. The renovation crews have been moving stuff around during the day, he explained. Probably just settling noises you heard. But I knew what I'd heard. I decided not to mention the voice or the figure on the camera. I already sounded paranoid enough. As we were finishing our sweep, Mark got a call from the main office. "That's weird," he said after hanging up. "They were going through some old files and found something you might want to see." He handed me a printout of an old newspaper article. It was about the fire in 2018. The fire that had started in room 404. The article mentioned that while most of the wing had been successfully evacuated, they'd found a patient too late, an elderly woman who had been overlooked during the evacuation. Her name was Elizabeth Reeves. She'd been a patient with dementia, confused and unable to call for help when the fire started. By the time they realized she was missing, smoke inhalation had already taken her life. "Room 404, I whispered. "Help her." My shift ended at 7 a.m. I gave my report, including everything that had happened, even the parts that made me sound crazy. To my surprise, my supervisor didn't seem shocked. "You're not the first," he said quietly. "That's why we normally don't put new people on the East Wing night shift alone." I quit the next day. Some might call it cowardice, but I call it self-preservation. I've since learned that 3 other security guards reported similar experiences in the months following the fire. All involved mysterious phone calls, sudden cold spots, and whispered pleas for help. The East Wing of Westlake Memorial was finally demolished 6 months later. The official reason was structural damage that was too extensive to repair. But I've always wondered if there was another reason, if others had experienced what I did, and if someone decided that some buildings just can't be fixed. In its place now stands a memorial garden with a small plaque. It doesn't mention Elizabeth Reeves by name, just honors those who have passed within these walls. I still don't know what I experienced that night. Was it Elizabeth's spirit, somehow trapped in that moment of fear and confusion? Was it my own imagination, fueled by the eerie emptiness of those abandoned halls? All I know is that I can no longer dismiss other people's ghost stories. Because somewhere in that space between skepticism and belief, between what we can explain and what we can't, that's where the truth lies waiting. Just like Elizabeth waited, hoping someone would come to help her before it was too late. Sometimes, late at night, my phone will ring. And just for a moment, before I answer, I find myself holding my breath, afraid of who or what might be on the other end of the line. If you've had a similar experience working in abandoned buildings or hospitals, leave it in the comments below. Or maybe it's better not to share some stories. Some things, once given voice, can never be unheard. Sleep well. If you can.